Welcome to our video for Google Data Studio. This is session 1, importing data and creating a data source. Google Data Studio is a tool that is available through our Google interface. I'm logged in with a generic Google account right now, and then I just go to datastudio.google.com in order to be in the Data Studio environment. In this environment, I can create reports or I can create data sources to put onto my reports. So we're going to start by doing that. We need to have some data in order to work with. So I've uploaded a file onto our little DataSig training site. So in datasig.org, in the training video choice, I have a sample file for our workshop that we used. So you can just download that file. You can see I've done it more than once. And then we're going to bring that over into Google Drive so we can work with it as a spreadsheet. So moving over to Google Drive, one quick trick that's helpful to you is if I go to settings here and I click on settings, there's an option in Google Drive to automatically convert files to Google Docs format. So in other words, if I'm importing a CSV or an XLS file, this will automatically put it in Sheets format so I don't have to open it and then close it. Just a nice quick way to get that done. So having set that button, I'm going to leave that alone in my Google Drive. Now I'm going to go to New. I'm going to select File Upload. I'm going to navigate to my file. It's called for class. And there it is. Open it. And it's going to upload it into my Google Drive. And once it's in my Google Drive, it'll have the icon for class. So it's ready to be used in Google Data Studio. We'll close that. And I'm going to go over to Google Data Studio to work. So now what I need to do in order to have it available to me in Google Data Studio is I need to create it as a data source. When I click on data source, I click on plus here to create a new one. Since I haven't used this particular account before, sort of starting right from the beginning, you're going to get all the terms of service and everything. So we'll just accept all that. Don't really need to do all this, although I'm sure Google will be helpful. All right, so now we're going to create a data source. When you create a data source, you have a number of options. As you can see, it's quite extensive. We're just going to be concerned with Google Sheets today. So over here, I have my Google Sheet choice to create a data source from. I'm going to authorize that I can use this for my Google account. First time you do anything in Google, you typically have to authorize. So we're going to allow Google to access my sheets, Data Studio to access my sheets. And when I do that, it comes back and it says, oh, you have one sheet available. That's all I have at the moment. And I'm going to click on for class. And then as you can see here, there are 3 tabs within my Google Sheet. So I have a demographics, a math assessment, and an ELA assessment. I'm going to start just with demographics. When you're working with a data source, you're really just working with one sheet at a time and therefore one tab at a time. You will show later how you can take multiple sources and blend them together. But right now we're just working with one. I'm also going to give this one a name, because otherwise it's difficult if they're all called the same thing. So we're going to call this one demographics. Okay. Having given it a name, selected it here, I just click the Connect button. It shows me all of my fields that are in my data source. So this is just a field from a student information system. It has first names, last name, whether or not the student is a special needs student, whether or not they're a 504 student, ESL, a lunch description, free or reduced. And then in addition to that data, we also happen to have whether or not they were absent on a number of days. So we have a field for excused absences and excused tardies. You'll notice here when the data comes in that it's all text. I could then go in and change this so these are all numbers, and we will be doing that in a little bit. So I'm just going to take Q1 excused and change it to a numeric. So all of these should be numbers. So I'm just going to take a moment and do that. If your spreadsheet was set up as numerics originally, often it'll just come in as numbers. And you get the idea there. The reason I have all this data in here is one of my fields that you'll see is called days in session. That's also a number. And that allows me to calculate, we'll see in a little while in one of our other videos, how I can go in and calculate a membership day based on having all of my attendance and then having what date we are in session. So, for example, we're at day 100, you would just do the math to create a membership calculation. That'll be in a follow-up video. Once I've created all this, I'm ready to start to work, so I can click on Create Report. Normally, I'd go back and fix all of my numbers, but we're just going to move forward now, save some time. We're about to add data to our report, so we're going to click on Add to Report. And now we're ready to begin. So we now have data, and we have a fresh palette that we can put anything we want on. Notice that we start with an untitled report. We're going to give this a name. We're just going to call it Workshop for today. And you'll notice we have a number of choices in our tool. We can go in and insert all kinds of different data elements. So a time series, a bar chart, a pie chart, a table, and we'll see all of those as our course progresses. Right now, we're just going to start with a simple little bar chart. Put that in. Automatically, when you bring in an element to your Google Data Studio, and I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can see it, it'll default to certain fields that it thinks you want. Now, these aren't necessarily the fields that I want in this element, but it automatically does a best guess. So what we see here is here's our element, here's the data source that we're using on the right-hand side, here is the fields that it thinks we're using. So when you're talking about dimensions, that's usually your X dimension on your chart. So I'm going to have that just be, we're going to go with grade level today. So I want to do a report by grade. Throw grade level there. And then I want to know how many students are in each grade level. So here I'm summing my user ID. I don't want to sum my user ID. I want a count of how many students I have in each grade. So what you see here now is it going through and saying grade level. So here's my grades. And then there's my user ID. So it's counting how many students are in 12th through 6th grade. Now, obviously, it's not in the correct sort order. So now I just go down to my sort. And I want to sort by grade level. Change that. And I want to do that in ascending order. So there you get an idea of how to do a very simple chart right away. You just take your X dimension here, and then your metric, which is your Y dimension, and here I'm doing a count of something, and then your sort order. You could also choose to add filters and other features. We'll see as we move along, there's a lot more that you can do to this. You could also change the language here. For example, this word uses the word user ID as a count, and that doesn't mean a lot to my end user, so I'm going to change that to number of students. Or we'll just call it students. Click off that, and you see now this is my students, and this is how many I have in each amount. I could now take it and do further charts and add tables and such. I'm now going to add a table to the bottom of it so you can see how that looks. So let's do a little insert. We're going to take now a table right here, bring it down here. And again, when Google Data Studio brings in data, it just assumes what you want to see. As you can see, this is all pretend data using various names like names of presidents and stuff, just so that it's not real data. So I'm going to take first name, last name. I'd like to know. I'd also like to know, let's see. We're going to look at whether or not they're a special needs student, whether or not they're an ESL student, and perhaps some other things. So lunch description, whether or not they're free and reduced lunch. So that just gives you an idea of the various fields that you can bring in. One of the things that you can do here, If I look at my style, for example, you'll notice that we have row numbers on the left-hand side here. I may not want those, so I'm going to turn those off. So now it just has the names. You can adjust the size of your data. So for example, I might want to make it a little bigger, make it a little smaller. All of those choices are here. So I'm going here and making things a little bit bigger so it's easier for you to see. That's my headers I just made bigger. You can make your body content bigger and so on. It depends what you want to do. So here, having my data, the reason I wanted to show this to you is now I could take this data here and apply a filter to it. And what you will see now, I'm going to take my table, make it a little bit bigger. If I click on and go into view mode, so I'm going to actually view my first effort here, my Google Data Studio. If I view it and I click on the 10th grade, it will now just show me students who are in the 10th grade. So it's a great way for me to have both a bar chart. Now we're changing to 9th grade and so on, 7th grade. So you can get an idea of, I can not only look at my data in a image type of format where I'm doing a chart, but then I can look at it and see exactly who is contained within that image. And then when you want to go back to everyone, you can just reset the action. As you saw, there are choices there too for your end users to download a CSV, download an Excel file. You can take all of this data and start to work with it. So this is the end of our first session so that you can get an idea with some real basics in Google Data Studio. Hope this was helpful. Stay tuned to our next session.